So my team and I, we did a lot of work this summer at new student orientation. That might be why you maybe recognize my face if you're a new student. I gave several new student orientation presentations about the Financial and Life Skills Center, the work we do, the content we cover. And like through that time that I spent there and the time that my colleagues and I spent at new student orientation, we spoke a lot with students and families about paying for college and student loans. And as is really the case year over year, most of these folks were feeling anxious, overwhelmed, or confused about the borrowing and repayment process, which I can't blame them. I was too once upon a time. It is, I think, worth reminding everybody right now that knowledge is power. I'm going to steal a line from one of my former colleagues and my friend Allie. She says this all the time. Knowledge is power. So the more that you know about student loans and your borrowing needs, the more control that you're going to have and more confidence you're going to feel over your loans, your loan situation, and hopefully subsequently less stress as well. Okay. Now, with all of that said, one of the first things you need to know is how much college is going to cost you each year and how much you may need to borrow to get the bills paid. Penn State's net price calculator is going to give you an estimated cost of attendance minus financial aid that may be applied. And this aid can come directly from the FAFSA application, which is otherwise known as the free application for federal student aid. I'm going to go ahead and put the link for that net price calculator through the chat to everybody right now. So if you've never seen this tool before, I want you to click on it and I want you to plug in the details about yourself or your student if you're a parent joining on their behalf to report this information back to them. Use this tool to figure out about how much the next school year is going to cost you. Okay, this comes directly from Penn State, and it's going to give you an estimate based on the profile details or the student characteristics that are added in. It can be so helpful. Okay. So you got this net price calculator. It's giving you that estimated cost minus financial aid. That financial aid is going to come directly from the FAFSA application. So I kind of talked about this in reverse, as you see on my screen here. The free application for federal student aid gives students access to grants and scholarship from the federal and the state government. So we're talking federal and then PA state government. All right, that's your way of getting grants and scholarship, that free money from the government, as well as institutional scholarships at Penn State in many cases. I really have to stress this. Find and secure as much free money first as you can before borrowing student loans. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Find and secure as much free money first as you can before borrowing student loans. Grants and scholarships do not need to be repaid, whereas loans will almost certainly have to be repaid in full with interest, meaning that you will repay more than you originally borrowed. So if you took out a loan for $5,500, in repaying that loan, you are going to more likely than not end up paying more than $5,500 back for it. So it's not cheap. It's not that free money. It's a source of funding if absolutely need be, and there are reasons to be grateful for it, and there are benefits that are built in for borrowers, which we'll talk about. But when possible, apply for the free money, the grants, and the scholarships. Okay. Now here's what I'll say about Penn State scholarship awarding. It is fairly decentralized, so students should connect directly with their academic colleges and their departments to identify and apply for scholarships, as well as look externally on sites like fastweb.com for many thousands of others of scholarships for which they are probably eligible. Okay. I would also follow the Office of Student Aid on social media. I know they've got an Instagram page. I don't think they have Facebook unless that's changed, but they definitely have Twitter and Instagram. And they are also, regularly pushing out and promoting legitimate scholarships for which students can apply. And that's free money that's out there. It takes some time and effort. My team and I talk about applying for scholarships like a part-time job, but like hey, if you spend an hour filling out a scholarship application and you get $5,000 back in exchange as an award, like I would love to be paid $5,000 an hour for my time. And I think that you would too. So please don't be shy about making it a regular habit, looking for and applying for scholarships. Okay. Let's go back to this FAFSA application. FAFSA, which you can access via studentaid.gov. So I'm going to put that link through as well. This FAFSA application is going to give undergraduate and graduate students access to federal student loans if they need. That's what we're here to talk about today. So if you are looking for or in need of a federal student loan, that's not going to become available to you unless you apply for FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid on studentaid.gov. Okay. Hopefully it is clear that filling out this application on an annual basis is an essential part of paying for college, not only because it, gives you access to loans if you need, but also is going to give you access to, like I said earlier, that free money, grants and scholarships. So it's going to make it possible for you to pay for college more easily in many cases, and it makes budgeting for college expenses easier. This application, so FAFSA for the 26-27 school year, is going to open next month on October 1st, which I forget what day of the week that is. I think it's during the week, but regardless, mark your calendar. The free application for federal student aid for the 2026-2027 academic year opens next month on October 1st. Mark your calendars and submit that form as soon as you can on or after that date. I want you to think about funding out there as like a big bucket of money that students who get their applications in first, who have financial need or meet merit requirements, are going to get access to that funding first. And folks who are late to submit their application might not have much left to draw from. Okay, as that bucket kind of dwindles down, there's not an unlimited amount of funding when it comes to like grants and scholarships out there. So you want to get your FAFSA application in as soon as you can. I talked a little bit about this in my webinar from 2 weeks ago. Go back to that paying for college recording to brush up on some of this stuff. Or check out the studentaid.gov website for some more information. Penn State's financial aid office also has a really nicely well done, refined, relaunched website that has tons of great information about grants and scholarships as well, which I will link to at some point during this session. All right, so here's our primer. Here's like the beginning of the life cycle of student loans. How do I get access to loans? It is through the free application for federal student aid, talking about federal loans specifically. I'm going to pause for a minute because I've already got the Q&A active here. Yes. Okay. So this session, questions coming through. Yes, this session is going to be applicable for grad students. I will talk about grad student loan borrowing in addition to undergrad borrowing and Parent Plus borrowing. So hang tight on that. The details will be coming through. Question, do we get money from FAFSA or from the school or both? So the question is, what I want to clarify is that like you fill out your free application for federal student aid, and through that application, right, the financial aid office is looking at what's been submitted, your student aid index, grants and scholarships, if eligible, are going to be applied to or given to or awarded to that student in their financial aid package. So it's not necessarily the government deciding, here's how much money you get. It is the government saying, here's a student aid index. Here's this number that represents how much financial need you have or means that you have to pay for college. And this is what you would see like if you were a student, a high school student looking to, go to college, you submit these different applications to different colleges and you'd send them your FAFSA information, and they're going to come up with these different financial aid award packages based on, the funding that they have and the population of students and, what their needs are overall. Okay. And then the final question here. Is there a way to indicate on the FAFSA that my 2026 income will be a third of what it was prior to 2026? What I will say is you can update your FAFSA. All right, it is possible to go back into studentaid.gov if you need to make changes or corrections to your FAFSA application. There is a way to do so from your dashboard. I don't know, I don't think that you're going to be able to indicate, because FAFSA is pulling tax information from years past, like from your past. It's not going from current application year, which I know can be a little bit wonky or challenging for folks, but there are ways to update that information. Okay. And I'm getting some immediate feedback from my colleague in financial aid saying, call the school for a special circumstance review. Okay, so for this question specifically, is there a way to indicate on the FAFSA that my 2026 income will be a third of what it was prior to 2026? No, but you can call the school for a special circumstance review. Awesome. Jamie, let me see if I can get you promoted here. I think we somehow got you kicked off as a panelist. Let me see if I can get you promoted. Okay, you have to use the 2024 tax information for your 2026 2027 FAFSA application. Jamie, I'm getting you up here. That way you can just unmute yourself. I'm gonna promote you to panelist. There you go. Jamie, you want to unmute here? Are you able to? You want to hop in really quick on this question?
Hey, sorry about that. It kicked me off and then put me back in as a host. So
no worries. All right, take it away.
So no, that's a great question. So if you do have a special circumstance like that, unfortunately, you do have to use the 2024, what they're asking for, but then contact the school and we can review a special circumstance for you. Some schools will allow you to do changes for your current tax year. At Penn State, we require that you file the taxes for that tax year you're having that special circumstance in. So you may need to wait until the spring semester to file it. But again, contact our office. We're happy to help you with that.
Excellent. All right, Jamie, you interrupt me at any point as you see these questions come through. For folks in the group, I know that we're going to probably have some very specific questions that we want to ask that are related to individual financial circumstances or award packages or whatever, what have you. I will answer the high level questions as best I can. Jamie is here as a representative from the financial aid office, but know that he might not be able to answer all of your questions in this setting. So maybe, Jamie, if you could send through the chat the contact page for Office of Financial Aid, or like whatever the best way is for folks to get in contact with financial aid if they've got some really situation specific questions they'd like to get addressed. I think that would be helpful. I didn't have that. Thank you. I didn't have that link queued up, but it's just the nature of this conversation. People are going to have very specific questions.
And for the FAFSA question too, just for everybody to remember, FAFSA is just your application. The school determines your eligibility and your financial aid award. So you don't get money just by filing the FAFSA. The school determines that amount. So just wanted to clarify, but you did great, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. And that's why for any of our new students, you would have seen different award packages offered by different schools when you went through the college application process. All righty. Woo! So we're at the beginning of the life cycle still. There's a lot actually to cover in the beginning parts of this. So let's keep going. All right, let's talk loan types here. For our purposes here today, I'm going to assume that you have maybe exhausted all of the free funding available to you, all the grants, all the scholarships. You are now in need of a student loan to cover your remaining college costs this year. Student loans are going to fall into two categories. There are federal student loans and private or alternative student loans. Since Penn State does participate in the federal direct loan program, students are encouraged to explore the loan options in this program before pursuing private or alternative loans. Federal loans feature, they're government issued, but they feature generally lower interest rates. In some cases, you've got the government paying interest on the loans when students are taking more than 6 credits at school. We call those subsidized loans. I'll detail those more in just a minute. These federal direct loans do not require some of the federal direct loans don't require a credit check. So like the ones that you would be offered via FAFSA, there's no credit check that accompanies your FAFSA application. And these loans are typically eligible for loan forgiveness and income-driven repayment plans, which borrowers are going to and have been grateful for in many situations, especially folks who experience periods of financial instability in their personal lives. Having access to an income-driven repayment plan when you are out of the workforce, or you've had a reduction in hours, or you're going through something financially at home that is difficult, a financial hardship, like having access to different repayment plans can be a major benefit. Okay. Private loans, on the other hand, are issued by a private lender. Generally, the interest rates are going to be higher than what you'd see from the federal government. They're not subsidized. They do require a credit check or a cosigner, so they are sometimes more difficult to obtain, particularly for young college students who do not have a credit reputation established or well established. And they don't typically offer forgiveness or income-driven repayment plans. So the kind of borrowers that, or I'm sorry, the types of benefits that you see federal student loan borrowers enjoying are not necessarily what a borrower of a private or alternative loan will have access to. So always start with federal loans. And from this slide out, I will be speaking exclusively about the life cycle of federal student loans. And as Jamie hops in and shares his insight as well, like he's going to be talking about federal student loans. There's really not much more we can say about private student loans. They're private and they will be obtained separate from your FAFSA application. Nobody at Penn State, nobody in my office, nor Jamie's office is ever going to endorse or recommend a particular loan provider in the private or alternative space. And I see, Jamie, you unmuted here. Do you want to add anything on this?
Yeah, just real quick. So for the private loans, number one, there's two types that students can apply for. One is a fixed rate loan and one's a variable rate loan. So depending on your program length, you may want to take a look at the variable rates because they are going to be much lower than the fixed rate loans. Long term, you want to go with the fixed rate, I would recommend, but that's entirely up to you. But also just want to mention for the private loans, we now have loans for students, for the parents, for grandparents, and now for siblings. So there are a lot of options to finance your education. And as we move in, especially to the 25-26 year, as of July 1st, 2026, the Parent Plus loan options are reducing the amount that students can borrow. I think we're going to see a boom in those private education loan options and hopefully some better repayment options and better things for the students. So just wanted to throw that out there. So thank you.
That's good information, Jamie. And I hope so too. Those of you who've kind of, are trying to stay aware of what's happening at the federal level, there has been legislation passed this summer that is going to, that is making some changes to the federal borrowing landscape that you're going to want to be familiar with. I would certainly, start doing some Google reviews on that, or keep posted with the Department of Ed. There are listservs that the Department of Ed manages that, where they're sharing out when possible. Not a lot of information has come so far, but like hopefully more will start to trickle down through email form or letters or whatever, where we're starting to get more information about how these changes from the legislation passed over the summer are going to impact borrowers moving forward. So and to Jamie, you're probably more knowledgeable about any of that than even I am. So if there's anything that is worth sharing at any point during this session related to the legislation, please don't be shy about doing so.
Yeah, just want to jump into because we do have a student on a graduate student asking that program, the Graduate Plus loan is ending on that date as well. So graduate students will have the unsubsidized direct federal loan for $20,500, be that over fall, spring, summer, or however they choose to use those amounts, as long as they're in typically 5 credits or more. But as far as the graduate students, beyond that loan option, you would be then looking at the private education loans.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you. Okay. So let's talk action steps to financial aid. Still at the beginning stages of the life cycle of a loan. All right. Now, assuming you've completed FAFSA, you're going to see in your financial aid award summary on Lion Path, which will become available at some point, depending on your status here at Penn State, you're going to see in that financial aid award summary any federal loans that have been offered to you as a student, like direct to you. You're going to need to either accept in whole or in part or decline the loans. And for any that you accept, you'll need to complete entrance counseling and sign the master promissory note on studentaid.gov. Now, if you are a student who has been selected for verification, please make sure you are responding to the request. It's going to come through via email to you. And I'm sure Jamie has a lot that he would want to share about this, because I do think that students do not always check their email and they're not always seeing that request for verification, but you need to make sure that you acknowledge it and respond. Verification is a federal mandate that requires Penn State to confirm the accuracy of information reported on your FAFSA application. So you're going to get that email from the Office of Student Aid, and it's going to explain what documentation must be submitted. You will also see verification requests displayed on the to-do list located on the homepage of your Lion Path account. Okay. I'm going to send some links through that I think will be helpful. Oops. I was about to send it only to you, Jamie. I want everybody to get this. Okay. So the first link is going to give you information about how to complete entrance counseling at Penn State. And then the second link is going to walk you through how to accept or decline loans. I don't know who made this in the Office of Student Aid, Jamie, but it is an awesome little tutorial that even I have found useful as someone who is not a student at Penn State, but like wants to see that student perspective of like, how do I go through and accept or decline some of my financial aid? How do I adjust the loan amounts if I don't want to borrow the full amount, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a really great resource that I encourage you all to peruse if you haven't looked at it before, or if you're not sure about what entrance counseling is or how to accept or decline your aid. I mean, at this point, a decision was made, I believe, for most of you, just given that this is the third week of the semester. But like, if you are a prospective student and you're trying to, think about, all right, how do I navigate this as I come into, Penn State moving forward, this is really good information for you to have. Any parents who are in attendance that want to learn more about Parent Plus loans, I will share more about those shortly, but I do want to note that applications for those loans typically open in July. So as you look at, at the time at which bills start coming out over the summer, those applications for Parent Plus loans also start to open as well. I think we had another question coming through. Okay, this is a good question for Jamie, I think. So we're kind of going back to what some of these changes that are going to come through in the financial aid landscape from this summer's legislation. Is it true that students already in college and their parents are grandfathered into the current loan rules, even if they eventually go to grad or professional school?
My understanding is that it's for 3 years. They can continue to borrow for 3 years. And then it stops. So we're still waiting for that to come through 100%, but my understanding is it's been grandfathered for 3 additional years with that. So that's for grad students if they're grandfathered into that. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jamie. All right. So let's zoom in on the types of federal direct loans and who they may be made available to. So going across this list, you've got number 1, direct unsubsidized loans. These are loans that are only available to undergrad students with demonstrated financial need. Now, these loans, I wrote these numbers down so that I'm not wrong in terms of costs of these loans. So these direct subsidized loans come with a fixed interest rate of 6.39% for any that are dispersed between July 1 and June 30th of 2026. So July 1 of this year through June 30th of 2026. And they carry a loan origination fee of 1.057%, which is deducted from the loan at disbursement. Okay. What's nice about these subsidized loans is that while students are in school at least half time, the government pays the interest. That is the subsidized part. So these are like the best of the federal loans, that may be made available to students, but not every student's going to be eligible because they don't necessarily have the financial need required to, be eligible to receive them. Okay. But if you see, if you do see subsidized pop up on your Line Path award summary like that, okay, this is what it means. The government is paying the interest on the subsidized loan while you were in school and for 6 months after you graduate before you enter repayment, which we'll talk about later. Okay. Direct unsubsidized loans, so number 2 here, are available to undergraduate, graduate, and professional students regardless of financial need. So for undergrads, the fixed interest rate on these unsubsidized loans is also 6.39% for the loans dispersed between July 1 of 2025 through June 30th of 2026. Graduate and professional students, though, they're going to pay a higher interest rate. It's 7.94%. It's got the same origination fee percentage, 1.057. Okay. These loans, direct subsidized and direct unsubsidized loans, are both loans that come through your FAFSA application. So if you're filling out FAFSA, you have the potential to obtain these types of loans. Okay. Numbers 3 and 4 on the screen, the federal direct plus loans like Parent Plus loans and Grad Plus loans are made available to parents or graduate students through a separate application on studentaid.gov. Now, these two types of loans share the same interest rate right now. It's 8.94%. It's a fixed interest rate for loans dispersed in that same window of time for this year. And their origination fee is a little bit higher. It's 4.228% right now. And that's going to be deducted from the loan at the time of disbursement. Okay. Now, again, I know I've got parents on the call, so I'm going to go a little bit further into Parent Plus loans. And I'm just checking the time, 12:33. We got a lot of content to cover. So I'm going to hope maybe Jamie's in the chat or in the Q&A on that one. I'm going to come back to any questions in just a minute, but I do want to keep rolling with some of this content here. Okay. And I want to get into Parent Plus loans again, because I know we've got folks on the call. We've got Penn State parents. We've also got employees here at Penn State on the call who are parents that are considering taking out loans for their child who is in school or will be attending school. And they're trying to decide, okay, do I need a Parent Plus loan? What's going on here? How does this work? All right. So if you are somebody who is curious about Parent Plus loans, this is how they work or who they're available to. Let's start there. Parent Plus loans are available to biological or adoptive parents of dependent undergraduate students enrolled at least half time. Okay. Now, in some cases, a step parent may qualify. Grandparents and legal guardians are not eligible for Parent Plus loans unless they have like adopted the child, the student who is going to be enrolled at least half time, for whom they are trying to obtain the loan and then pay their college costs with, right? So something to be mindful of. Now, Parent Plus loans, like I mentioned, the plus loans in general, these do require a credit check at the time of application. So parents who have adverse credit history may need to obtain a co-signer, someone who has who does not have adverse credit history that will sign on to the loan with them. Or alternatively, there is an option to provide satisfactory documentation explaining perhaps an extenuating circumstance that has caused the adverse credit history, something to kind of go along with the application that could encourage the Department of Ed to approve your application for a Parent Plus loan despite having some adverse credit. Okay. Information about how to navigate those, like that option, the second one in particular, can be found at studentaid.gov. So I can't go into all the details or like direct you to this or that, but I will say studentaid.gov, for as big and massive as a website as it is, it's got a lot of good information. It's going to walk you through and give you information about how to navigate the Parent Plus loan if you do have adverse credit history. Okay, so please don't be shy about doing some of that research yourself as well. Please also know that as a parent, if you would like to apply for a Parent Plus loan to get the funds to help pay for your child's education expenses, FAFSA has to be completed first. So Parent Plus loans are not going to be issued to a parent if their child hasn't already completed FAFSA. Okay. And then Jamie, to be sure, do students who complete FAFSA also have to obtain, like take out their own federal direct subsidized or unsubsidized loans before a parent can then apply? So do those loans to the student have to be exhausted first?
They don't. We highly recommend it. If a student doesn't do that, we will send them a message to consider that before we process the Parent Plus loan.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. I appreciate that. So the maximum annual loan cost is going to be the cost of attendance, or I should say the maximum amount that you can borrow each year is going to be up to cost of attendance minus financial aid otherwise received, which I'll show you on a little chart here in just a minute, kind of what that looks like. A big question that parents ask us about the loans, the Parent Plus loans, is, well, can I defer payments while my child is in school? And the answer is yes. During the application process, you can request a deferment on payments for your Parent Plus loans, or after the fact, you can reach out to the loan servicer who is tied to your Parent Plus loan and work with them to set up a deferment for while your student is in school. That is possible. Okay. But note that interest will accrue on that loan while it's in deferment during the time that your child is in school, attending Penn State and working on their degree. Okay. Income-driven repayment and forgiveness is possible with Parent Plus loans, but I will say that it is not as straightforward a process as we would like it to be. And there tend to be a lot of if then or what if scenarios with Parent Plus loans and forgiveness in particular. So here's what I'll say. If you are a Penn State employee and you've got a Parent Plus loan, or you're, planning on taking out a Parent Plus loan on behalf of your student and you're curious about loan forgiveness, you are more than welcome to schedule an appointment with one of our financial counselors in office to learn more about your options. I think we did something like, I don't know, 60 or 70 appointments 2 years ago. We're still pulling together our numbers from the 24-26 or 24-25 academic year, but I think we did something like, I don't know, 60 or 75 different appointments with Penn State employees. And a lot of those conversations around their loans and loan forgiveness had to do with Parent Plus loans as well. So if you are an employee, you are welcome to email finlit@psu.edu. We'll get you set up for an appointment with one of our counselors to talk Parent Plus loans and forgiveness and kind of how to navigate that space, at least for now. And there's always something going on with forgiveness and some changes potentially on the horizon. So it's worth having a conversation with somebody from our team. As much, Jamie knows a ton about the financial aid landscape. We also have somebody in-house who knows a ton about what is going on with the federal public service loan forgiveness program and loan forgiveness at that level in general. So reach out to the experts as you can find them. All right. Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions coming through right now. I think we're doing good. Jamie, thank you for your support in the chat. I appreciate it, or in the Q&A rather. So we've got one of the burning questions. How much can I borrow? How much can students and or parents borrow in federal student loans? So as a reminder, your goal should be to maximize college while minimizing student loan debt. So be sure to first budget. Okay, I mentioned this earlier, budget before taking out any loans. In most cases, you're not going to be offered an endless amount of federal student loans. As should be the case, in my opinion. We have a $1.6 trillion student loan crisis in this country. And so, I think that there needs to be, there can't just be an endless flow of federal student loans to students. Especially, we've got students who don't always know, what they're making decisions about. It not, because it's their fault, but just because there's so much to understand of this landscape, right? So that said, you're going to see here, you'll notice on the screen that for undergraduate students in particular, the annual borrowing limit might seem rather low in comparison with the annual cost of tuition here at Penn State. And this is probably true for most institutions, just given the cost of college today. Okay. So you're thinking, here's how much college is costing me. Here's how much I can borrow as an undergraduate student in federal student loans. That amount is much smaller than my, what I owe for tuition in most cases, right? Assuming, unless you've got a ton of grants and scholarships, like it's not going to be enough to cover the full bill. $5,500 for a first year dependent student is usually not going to be enough to cover whatever their remaining bill is. This is why I was emphasizing at the beginning of this session, like it's really important to find and apply for scholarships. Make sure you're getting your FAFSA application in early so that if you are eligible for some of that free money, you are awarded that free money. And you're not having to miss out on those opportunities, or you're applying for scholarships as often as you can, because it's just the federal student loans aren't going to cover everything, nor do you want them to have to cover everything, because it's the money, you got to borrow it and repay it with a premium. It's not free. Okay. So just got to get that out of the way. Let's talk annual loan limits versus aggregate limits. The annual loan limit is how much you can borrow each year. So that's what you see in gray on the screen here. So like if we're looking first, 3 bars or 3 rows here, that's the annual loan limit. All right, it's how much you can borrow each year. And that amount is going to differ annually based on how many credits you've obtained, which you can see on the screen. All right, notice that on the right-hand column, the annual limits are higher for independent students. Students are considered independent if they are at least 24 years old, they're married, they're a graduate or professional student, they're a veteran, they're a member of the armed forces, an orphan, a ward of the court, or someone with legal dependents, or other than a spouse, an emancipated minor, or someone who is homeless or at risk of being homeless. If any of that applies to you, you have the potential to, be in that independent student status, or you will be in that independent student status. Okay. Students are also entitled to independent student annual borrowing limits if their parents have applied for and were denied a Parent Plus loan. Jamie, I'm going to ask, because I know this is a question that we have come up a lot at our center. Students will ask us, well, how can my parents claim me on their taxes, but they're not helping me at all with cost of college. Can I become an independent student? How do I get, how can I, is that possible? This is a question we get a lot. What would you say to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 2 options that students have. So if they don't meet any of those requirements and it's just parents saying, I'm not going to help you, or I'm not going to do that, you do have an option now on the FAFSA to mark that parents will not be supporting or completing the form, but students would only be eligible for the unsubsidized direct federal loan. So that's one thing. You won't get grants and things like that. You're only going to get the unsubsidized amount of the loans that are listed here for each year. The other thing is if there is abuse or a special circumstance, or the student was removed or doesn't have contact with their parents or something like that, you absolutely want to complete the FAFSA form honestly and say that that there's a special circumstance. Then you'd contact our office and we would review that for a special circumstance professional judgment review. So there's two ways to do it depending on the situation. But just if you're talking to your parents and they say, no, I don't want to help you, or I'm not going to fill out the form, the only real option you have is to talk to them, make sure that they understand they're not liable for your costs and things like that. They're only providing their tax information. That's it. Or completing the FAFSA by saying I'm only eligible for the unsubsidized loan option.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jamie. All right, gang. Now, aggregate loan limits. Aggregate, which you see in yellow on the screen here, this is representing the total amount that can be borrowed over the lifetime, essentially over a lifetime. For undergraduate, dependent, and independent students, you'll see that the aggregate borrowing limits are $31,000 and $57,500 respectively. Note that in addition to having an annual borrowing limit, graduate students who are obtaining loans through FAFSA also have an aggregate borrowing limit of $138,500, which includes any loans borrowed during undergrad. Okay, so if you borrowed that full aggregate limit as a dependent or independent student in undergrad, that's going to be deducted from the total limit of $138,500. Now, one of the things that you could do is you can pay back on some of these loans rather, that you've borrowed, and it will free up that total limit for you again. Okay, so it's like within this 138,500, if you want to do some repayment of your loans, be in the workforce for a little bit after undergrad, and then enter grad school, you free up some of that space for borrowing. You free up some of that money for yourself once again. Okay. Federal Direct Plus loans are the only loans that do not have an aggregate limit, and their annual borrowing limit is cost of attendance minus any other financial aid like grants and scholarships. So for example, this is going to be a rough example, and Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong on this. If an undergrad student has a total annual cost of attendance of, let's say, $45,000, and they've received $20,000 in grants, scholarships, and their own federal student loans, which they've accepted all of this, the parent could then obtain a Parent Plus loan for up to $25,000 to cover the remaining costs. Does that sound about right, Jamie?
Correct, 100%. Yep.
Woohoo! All right, I'm doing it. All right, and see, if I get this, guys, y'all can get this too. It's not, it feels like it can be a little overwhelming and consuming, or confusing, but we can all figure this out. Okay. Now, let's move on. All right, for all students borrowing federal student loans or receiving other types of financial aid, this includes graduate students as well, it is really important that you maintain satisfactory academic progress so that your funding continues to disperse as expected. This is what I consider to be like the middle part of the student loan life cycle. This is like the teenage, young adult years, I suppose. Like it's on repeat for a little while here for the time that you're in school, 3, 4, 5, 6 years or more, whatever it may be. Okay. So when I say satisfactory academic progress, I'm talking SAP. What exactly is SAP? SAP is this expectation that you finish and pass at least 67% of your classes. You've got a cumulative GPA above 2.0 or 3.0, depending on your level here at Penn State, and you are finishing your degree in your allotted time. Okay. Now, if you are not meeting SAP, so if you are not meeting the criteria listed on the left side, you are going to get emails from the Office of Student Aid. Please make sure you are reading those emails. Even if your inbox, excuse me, is a spicy hot mess of unread messages, you have got to make sure that you see the emails coming through to you from the Office of Student Aid, or from the bursar's office, or from some of these really key offices on campus who've got important information to share with you that is usually timely, and probably has some action items built into it. Okay. Now, one way to make sure that you are on track with SAP is to meet regularly with your academic advisor, especially before dropping a class. There may be implications, for your financial aid if you were to do a late drop or just do a regular drop during that first week of classes that we just went through. You want to make sure that you are making a sound academic choice regarding your coursework, so that you're able to finish your program, graduate on time, but also that you're not going to make a decision that imperils your financial aid that you currently have and are relying on. Okay. If you are struggling in your courses, you've got Penn State Learning, has free tutoring, a writing center, all sorts of great resources on campus to make sure that you stay nice and strong and academically, well situated with your courses to not, have to drop below those cumulative GPA thresholds that you see listed on the left side of the screen. Okay. Now, assuming that you've gone through your time at Penn State, we're going to get to the other end of the student loan life cycle. So I'm done with my program. I've graduated. I'm going to enter repayment here. I know that's coming. So what do I do? How do I get rid of my student loan debt? Let's get to the end of the student loan life cycle here. All right. Generally, there are 4 main ways to do it. You can repay them, which I'll detail more on the next slide, or you could have them forgiven, discharged, or canceled. Loan forgiveness means that you don't have to repay part or all of your balance if you meet certain program requirements. So these programs include public service loan forgiveness, teacher loan forgiveness, These are, benefiting folks who work in government or nonprofit spaces, or K-12 educators, certain teachers that qualify. There's income-driven repayment forgiveness, which is going to help clear balances after a period of time, usually something like 20 to 25 years. Discharge cancels your loan because of a special circumstance, which is usually outside of your control. So, for example, total or permanent disability, death, bankruptcy in rare cases, very rare cases, school closure, fraud or forgery, or if your school misled you, there may be the potential to have your loans discharged. That is borrower initiated. So discharge comes from a borrower filling out a form. This is a borrower saying there's a reason why, there's something that happened and my loan should be discharged because of it. So that's initiated by the borrower. Cancellation usually comes from laws or legislative acts that wipe out certain loan balances for groups of borrowers. It's less common and it depends on government action, but when it happens, it can happen broadly, like pandemic-related relief or other one-time cancellation measures. So that's what we tend to see pop up in the news from time to time, or what we see as a hot topic in DC. Okay, so those are the four main pathways. I'm going to zoom in on repayment, because repayment is the most common way that folks are going to get rid of their student loan debt. They're going to be making regular payments until the balance is gone. So plans include the standard plan, which is going to be fixed payments over 10 years time, the graduated repayment plan, which is also going to be payments over 10 years time, but they're not fixed. They will gradually increase on a monthly basis. This idea that, like, I'm going to start making more money over 10 years, I can better manage a larger student loan repayment amount on a monthly basis. Everything will kind of proportionally grow. You also have the extended standard repayment plan. So what that does is it has a longer term, up to 25 years, and lower monthly repayments. Okay. So if you want to pay off your loans in a set number of years, you're probably going to opt for one of the first three on the screen. If you are looking for repayment plans that are going to give you a monthly payment based on how much money you make or how much discretionary income you have to make those payments, you're going to probably opt for one of the income-driven plans, we call them. We've got pay as you earn, income-based repayment, income contingent repayment, and SAVE is still listed on the studentaid.gov website, but this particular plan is tied up in litigation at this point, and it's not something that's, you can't opt into it at this point, and folks who are in it are have a lot of feelings about being stuck in this particular plan. But the idea being that, like, all four of these are, meant to make repayment a little bit easier for borrowers for a small period of time, a long period of time, or, these are generally going to be required plans that go along with something like public service loan forgiveness. So, like, to get public service loan forgiveness, you generally would need to be in an income-driven plan. All of that said, there's like some strategizing required here, in my opinion. So picking your plan should require some thought. You should be thinking about this in advance. I will say you will be put into the standard plan if you don't make a decision for yourself, but it is worthwhile to explore your options. And I'll tell you how you can do that here in just a second. You're going to have 6 months of a grace period before you're expected to begin repayment. During that time, subsidized loans will continue to not accrue interest, like I mentioned before. Payments are going to be made to your federal loan servicer, not the federal government directly. So how much you pay each month is going to depend on that plan that you select. And I do really firmly believe that everybody who's got loan repayment on the horizon should estimate their monthly payment using the studentaid.gov loan simulator tool. So I'm throwing that in the chat for you all. It will help you get an idea of what monthly payments could look like based on the plan that you select. And if at any point you decide that your current plan isn't working for you or your household budget, you can change your plan anytime for free at studentaid.gov or via your loan servicer that you can reach out to. Speaking of, These are the current federal student loan servicers. There are scammers out there who are going to disguise themselves as your loan servicer. Do not fall for it. Okay, here are the loan servicers. Here is their contact information. If you need to get in contact with them or you're receiving correspondence that you are suspicious, I don't know, is this legitimate? Is this a scammer? I don't know. You call up your loan servicer or you hop on to your dashboard and you reach out to them and confirm anything and everything before sharing details or making a payment if you feel like this payment is being solicited from somebody other than your actual loan servicer. Okay, this contact information is also available on the studentaid.gov website. So I'm going to wrap up here with a question that is probably not burning for folks. Folks probably don't want to think about it, but it is important to answer. What happens if I don't pay my student loans? Well, if it's been 270 days since your last payment, your loans are going to be considered defaulted. Consequences of student loan default include losing eligibility for additional federal aid. So if you need to continue borrowing to complete your program, or if you're planning to, get into grad school and create complete a graduate degree, that's not going to be, well, it's not going to be possible for you to get federal aid to fund that if your loans are currently in default. So you lose that eligibility. You've got credit implications. So your credit history is going to reflect that default. You may get to a point where wages are being garnished, court action is taking place, and subsequently court fees or collection fees or attorney fees are being charged. Just not anything any of us want to deal with. I'm sure we can all agree on that. So what do you do? If you do have defaulted loans or find yourself in the future with a defaulted loan, you can take corrective action by either rehabilitating your loan or consolidating your loan. Okay. Both options have pros and cons. I will say that. And the details of these options are on studentaid.gov. One thing that I highlighted from this list of okay, what do these options look like respectively is that if you go the consolidation route, your default's going to remain on your credit history. If you go the rehab route, the default is going to be removed from your credit report, though the late payment history will stay. So one of the pros and cons that exist among a few others as you look at these options and figure out which is going to be best for me to get my loan or loans back into good standing, please make sure you connect with your loan servicer. They can help you navigate these options, and they certainly can help get you into an income-driven repayment plan in the first place, which should hopefully prevent you from missing payments at all and winding up in default after 270 days anyways, okay? This is a lot of information, and it wasn't even, I think, everything that we could possibly talk about as it relates to student loans and the federal aid landscape at this current time, which is crazy. But I do think you got some good nuggets of information and some language to start your research if this is all kind of new for you. Here's what I will say. My team and I, we offer one-on-one appointments to students via Starfish. So if you want to meet with us to talk out your, student loan situation in more detail, you're welcome to. You're also welcome to hit up some of our asynchronous resources on our website, which you can get through the yellow QR code if you have multiple devices. I'm going to put these links in the chat as well for you, so you've got them directly. Just know that it can be confusing. This can be a lot to digest, but you don't have to go it alone. And again, the more you know, knowledge is power. It's going to help you to feel in control of your borrowing situation, confident with your choices, and confident that you are maximizing college while minimizing student loan debt. Jamie earlier, I think, sent through the chat how to get connected with the Office of Financial Aid. Jamie, if you're able to send that again, I think it would be helpful for folks. And also thank you, Jamie, for stepping in and answering some of these questions that I was not able to answer clearly. I do so appreciate you on that.